I'll start with self-locating myself. I am a South Asian, Pakistani, Sindhyani, Jamshore wali, Hyderabadi and Karachi wali. And I will recite a couplet by Bahadur Shah Zafar. कितना है बदनसीब ज़फ़्र दफन के लिए, कितना है बदनसीब ज़फ़्र दफन के लिए, 2 गज़ ज़मीं भी ना मिली कुए यार में. This roughly translates to how unlucky is Zafar that to be buried he couldn't find 2 feet of ground in his beloved's land. The title of this piece is Chilawatni sa lagta hai. It feels like an exile. The title is inspired by the poetry of Bahadur Shah Zafar, the last Mughal emperor of the subcontinent, who was exiled to Burma by British colonizers. Chilawatni sa lagta hai. Every time I feel I have grounded myself and can comprehend the relationship I have with all my identities, another one pops up. Lately, I have been exploring my place on this land, and a lot has come to surface. At the top of the surface are these questions. What is home? Where is home? I have always struggled with what home is, and whatever I learned quite often leads me feeling emotionally homeless. I was initially taught it's a 4-walled place where you live with your family, and it's supposed to be quite comfortable. But if you are like me and had a dysfunctional family, you know that meaning doesn't fit. I was later taught that home is also the piece of land you are born in, and that was ingrained deeply in me by the teachings of my family. But it didn't settle in my head completely that home is only supposed to be a physical space. So I kept exploring and digging deep. I later found some meanings that home can be your own body, or a food item that your grandmother cooked, or a flower that was in your grandfather's garden, or a song that creates a rush of emotions, or maybe a person, or a bunch of loved ones. Now I feel home is supposed to make you feel that you can be yourself, that you won't have to pretend, or in my case, mask your neurodivergence. At home, you don't have to cover your body, scars, or thoughts, like you are required to do outside. You are comfortable with the house rules and don't have to tiptoe around. I have come quite close time and again to find such a home. And every time I feel that this is it, I move. It took me a while to understand why it completely unsettled me whenever I moved out of a home or away from home. I know now it is due to my abandonment issues caused by uncertainty from childhood and intergenerational trauma flowing through the land I was born in. That was once colonized, is under surveillance, and is always at the brink of chaos. In school, I was taught a very different version of subcontinent partition, minus the violence propagated by powerful people, especially men from all sides. They skipped the horrifying details of how people jumped into the trains of intergenerational trauma and got murdered in huge numbers. In school books, they also conveniently missed how Bangladeshi women suffered a few decades later in another war. There was no mention of regional violence, which also added to my discomfort in the country that was supposed to be home. Fortunately, my blood family and some books at home were there to teach me the people's narrative, which helped me make sense of the aftermath by understanding the cause. I was raised with indigenous values that our ancestors were the people of Mohenjo-daro, that Sindhu River is sacred, and the land of Sindh is our mother, as she has raised us, and we come from this soil, and shall be part of it after we die. And my father explicitly said that I'm providing you with education, so you serve your land and communities. It was a lot when I was little, but as years passed, the eagerness to learn drove me to study social sciences. And in one of the classes, they taught me about fragmented identities and that there can be harmony amongst all identities. That I could own my Pakistani identity and at the same time cherish the rich history of South Asia and take pride in traits and parts that I feel strong ties towards. But moving is still an uneasy process because my mental health makes it harder to embrace change and uncertainty. But moving is still an uneasy process because my mental health makes it harder to embrace change and uncertainty, but life always pushes me into fighting pits without a proper defense system. The world is built against people like me, and that makes it worse. Another daunting question I really ask myself is, why did I end up in Canada from all the places I could go? As I trace the answers to this question, I'm taken back to when my uncle moved to Canada in 2014. The uncle who is also a father figure and sometimes a brother and other times a friend. I had decided that year I wanted to move here because the idea of being close to him comforted me, which now when I look back at it was because he was home. He was home. I worked hard, and it was before I had grasped the idea of fragmented identities or before the indigenous values had sunk in. So I was just sold by the idea of the Canadian dream because studying abroad somehow makes you smarter and people start valuing you. And I wanted to be the smartest. But like many others, I didn't have the funds to come during my undergrad. Though I did have the brains, the IELTS certified brains. IELTS is a famous English language test that we third world folk have to retake every 2 years to prove to the English speaking world that we know their language. They keep forgetting that due to colonization, we were taught this since kindergarten. So they better increase the expiry period at least, because I'm tired, like many, of investing money, that too in US dollars, and sitting through tedious exam. Never mind. Getting back to my story. Where were we? Yes, my Canadian dream. So instead of that, during the undergrad, I ended up embarking on the American dream and went to an eye-opening exchange program. We can just say that I only miss cornbread, gravy, biscuits, and a few friends from Alabama, as that is where I lived for 4 months. And my North American dream just went to the grave after that. Hollywood was lying all along, and I felt more attached to where I come from. From that year onwards, life just became about finding home in Pakistan, which in ways I did, but there was sometimes subtle and sometimes not so subtle violence around me that kept me uneasy. I found a home in a cafe in my chosen family, in a reunited blood family, in communities I worked for and with, at chai places and in myself. But still, to be taken seriously in even my own country, I needed a graduate degree from abroad. And Canada was the only option, as the rodeo to the US wasn't fun. Plus, I was satisfied with being trilingual, and learning another language wasn't at the top of the list. So there was no other option. And I know I never wanted to step into a British university of all places. I applied while coping with my mental health struggles, got into 3 good schools, and started my studies in the infamous year of 2020, which we all can imagine didn't go that well, and completed my studies online. As I had come to study only, I ran back home after a year as home was calling earlier than before and because it had survived. It was important to go back. I don't know if it has happened with others, but during the first few months of lockdown that I spent alone in Edmonton, I constantly lived in a state of extreme anxiety that I would never get to see anyone back home. If the first world finds the cure, they would never share it with Pakistan, I feared. And everyone I love would die and the borders would never open. It was a horrifying feeling that clutched my chest for days. And I didn't know what to do. I felt helpless. It's the same feeling I get when I look at powerless countries facing war or genocide, because there are high chances that someday it will be us. And my heart goes out to them. After all, we have been made to feel helpless so many times. The lingering horror never goes away. The last time I was in Canada, I was here as a visitor. And this time, I'm here as a settler immigrant. When I told people I didn't want to come here, it shocked many of my peers, because it's in ways a third world countries, citizens dream, or many think it is. I'm not surprised that many feel it's the chance of a lifetime. But the comparison in my head makes it a little tricky. I am aware of my reality. For example, yes, being a woman makes me a second-class citizen in my own home country. Yes, I'm in constant fear of a fundamentalist mob or a change in a law that would further marginalize me. Yes, I was made to feel small and labeled a savage in Karachi because I'm a Sindhi, even though my nation is indigenous to the land. Yes, I was being underpaid at the workplace I was last working at. But it still was home. My color wasn't a reason I was unemployed, unlike here. My language wasn't called gibberish. The folk music of my land wasn't called loud and annoying. And I was there with loved ones, away from the anxiety that if the world starts bombing us or cuts the supply of vaccination or other resources in the times of crisis, there won't be 7 seas and unaffordable tickets blocking me from my loved ones. Alas, I don't think so I had a choice but to move to try my luck at survival, because all my dreams to help my communities went down the drain because I couldn't even afford therapy back home and sustain myself. I was forced out of my home. I was forced out of my home because the economy is in shackles. The intergenerational trauma is embedded deep, and we are still stuck with laws from the colonial era. Imperialism further disables us, and now here I am on this land, not indigenous to me, trying to make it my home. I don't even know where and how to start from without taking up space that isn't mine. What kills me is that my grandmother is unwell these days. And it's the start of the times that I would rather be there than here. What else can I say? Jilawatni sa lagta hai. It feels like exile.